everyone. Welcome to Rising. We have another fantastic show for you today. Good morning, Briahna. How are you?
I'm doing well, Robby. I'm looking forward to today's news, given the news day that yesterday was.
It was a long and interesting day, and we will talk about that and a lot of other stuff. Well, actually, why don't you give the audience a preview?
Well, Robby, we have a massive show today. Journalist Michael Schellenberger will join us to discuss some reporting he's done on the lab leak origins of COVID that finds the first people sickened by the virus were Chinese scientists at Wuhan Institute of Virology. Then Gallup editor-in-chief Mohammed Yunus will be with us in studio to discuss public opinion polling on transgenderism. Plus, Jordan Chariton will fill us in on his investigation into toxic gas levels in Michigan.
Well, we can't wait for that. But first, yesterday, Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 37 charges relating to his alleged mishandling of classified documents. After being fingerprinted and formally arraigned, the former president gave a primetime speech to supporters at his New Jersey golf club.
This is called election interference and yet another attempt to rig and steal a presidential election. More importantly, it's a political persecution like something straight out of a fascist or a communist nation.
Now, MSNBC chose not to air Trump's speech, and we'll get to that, more of that in just a bit. But first, The Hill's Brett Samuels is here with us to give some details of Trump's legal woes. Welcome, Brett. What's the latest on this front?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yesterday, obviously, we saw for the second time this year, former President Trump arriving at courthouse to be arraigned on criminal charges. In this case, there were federal charges, as you mentioned, related to his retention of classified documents and how he allegedly obstructed investigators from getting those documents back. And what we saw yesterday, especially in this primetime speech from the former president, was, I think, sort of a preview of what we can expect in sort of the weeks and months to come as this trial starts to play out, as a legal process starts to get moving down in Florida. We heard the former president attack Joe Biden, alleging that, Joe Biden and the Justice Department were sort of in cahoots to take out a political rival. We heard him offer up sort of a litany of potential defenses, many of which were either misleading or inaccurate, talking about the Presidential Records Act, comparing his own handling of classified documents to how President Biden, in his case that we've seen where classified documents were found at his Delaware home and in his old office, despite some key differences in those cases. And we saw former President Trump really attack special counsel Jack Smith, calling him a thug, a deranged lunatic, sort of launching into these insults against Jack Smith. So I think it's a preview of what we can expect post-arraignment now. We'll see the former president and his team really try to discredit this investigation, paint it as political, argue that these charges are meant to take out, the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination in 2024. So certainly yesterday was the start of what will be a long process, and we'll see how it plays out as it sort of has its backdrop of the political calendar for 2024.
Brett Samuels, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. Well, like we mentioned earlier, MSNBC chose not to air Trump's post-arraignment speech. Here's what host Rachel Maddow had to say on the matter.
Now, tonight, after his arraignment on federal felony charges, he's speaking again, this time to an audience of his supporters that's gathered for a campaign fundraiser tonight at his golf club and summer home in New Jersey. We knew heading into this that he was planning to make these remarks. We are prepared for his pre-fundraiser remarks tonight to again be essentially a Trump campaign speech. Because of that, we do not intend to carry these remarks live. As we have said before in these circumstances, there is a cost to us as a news organization to knowingly broadcast untrue things. We are here to bring you the news. It hurts our ability to do that if we live broadcast what we fully expect in advance to be a litany of lies and false accusations, no matter who says them. And I do not say this with any glee. I hope it is clear that this is not a glib decision. We take our responsibilities seriously. We revisit decisions like this all the time. We make the best call that we can in real time, every time. But tonight, our call is this. We will monitor that speech by the newly indicted former president. We will not carry his remarks live. If he says anything newsworthy, we promise we will turn that right around and bring it back to you.
And here's what Jake Tapper had to say over on CNN.
We do have now some of the sound, as I told you. We're not, and the audience, we're not carrying his remarks live because, frankly, he says a lot of things that are not true and sometimes potentially dangerous.
Yeah, the risk of doing it this way is that the news story becomes liberal media censors president, which is exactly the story that we're doing right now. The fact of them not covering the speech becomes its own story, which maybe you think is a better story than whatever falsehoods you predicted that Donald Trump was going to say. But there is a cost to doing that as well. And I'm not sure at this point, given the silo nature of the news ecosystem, where pretty much people who are watching MSNBC and CNN are not going to be Trump voters at all, what the actual damage is. Is the concern that their listeners are so suggestible or that Donald Trump is so persuasive that just hearing him say, I don't know, election denialism or I'm innocent or whatever it is you think he's going to say is going to flip them into Trump voters?
Yeah, I was watching CNN and MSNBC and Fox last night, and I happened to have flipped back over to CNN, MSNBC. It said, I can't remember which of the channels I was on, but it said Trump's remarks upcoming, and I missed this disclosure because I had been flipping back and forth. So I was waiting for the Trump speech, and I'm like, isn't it supposed to be on right now? And I didn't realize they were just skipping it. So then I switched over to Fox, which of course was carrying it. I think I agree with absolutely everything you said. What do they expect to still be in the mindset that you need to protect your viewers from hearing the things Trump has to say because they're wrong and or dangerous? Like, aren't we past that? You can't deplatform him. You can't.
No,
he's going to be
the
out
former
there
president
saying things. I think it doesn't inspire confidence in your own ability to rationally explain to people why the things he's saying are not correct.
100%.
I would point out that social media companies that I think were way too heavy-handed on moderation, YouTube including, has now decided they're going to go the other way. They've said, we realized something that Robby was saying all along, which is that this effort to shield people from hearing things we think are wrong has negative consequences and can actually chill legitimate political discussion. They said they're not going to police election disinfo anymore to the same extent that they were doing it previously. I think this is just a really look, they're not obligated to carry the speech. If from programming, they think their audience doesn't want to see it.
Sure.
They have more interesting content to do.
Sure.
Then they don't have to carry it. But that's not what they were saying. They were saying, we're afraid to let you see this.
That's
we're
what it comes off as. We're afraid, which basically feels like it's empowering to Trump. And look, the cable news complex does not control what people see anymore. It's not 1972. Anybody interested in watching the speech is going to flip over to Fox, which is not going to help your ratings, or they're going to go online and watch it. It's all over Twitter. It's all over YouTube. It's all over the internet. So you just don't have the same ability to influence the public knowledge the way that the corporate media used to in the past. And so your role has to change. If you believe the things that Donald Trump is saying is wrong, then offer your explanation why. But it does feel like, I'm sorry, a sort of a cope to just say, oh, it's not worth covering at all. So maybe this is the point at which we should talk about the substance of Trump's speech. What did you make of his remarks substantively? It
was exactly what you would expect. It was a defense. And again, we're not even in the category. He's not talking about the election. They're applying the whole what the things he's saying about the election are just abjectly false and we don't want to air them. They're applying that now to him presenting a defense in a criminal matter, which he's absolutely entitled to do. He is innocent until proven guilty. You might think the indictment is very damning, but he has every right to, under the Constitution, to argue that he did not violate these laws, and he's going to be doing that in court. We're not going to be airing his speech because it's too harmful to allow him to mount his defense. That is actually bonkers.
And it's quite obviously on its face newsworthy what Donald Trump believes to be the best defense to this criminal indictment. Because Rachel Maddow said, well, we'll review the speech, and if it's newsworthy, then we'll talk about it. We'll play it for you after the fact. Well, obviously, knowing the context of what the speech is about, even if he is lying, that is in fact newsworthy. So it's obviously not a newsworthiness standard. It's something else they're applying. And their inability to define that and be consistent about that is going to be an ongoing problem with those news organizations.
I thought the most salient or interesting part of his remarks was that he basically said exactly what his Republican defenders are saying about it, which is that this is unfair because they didn't do anything about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, and he threw Bill Clinton under the bus and George W. Bush as well. And they're just out to get Trump. They haven't treated anyone else like that, which that all may be, even if that's true, is not going to end up being a persuasive defense before a judge or jury in this actual criminal matter. He said he did nothing wrong. He called it the boxes hoax. So that's going to be the way it's being described.
He's still minting new linguistic terms for the American public. Yeah, I mean, I think that is true. This is the question that I hope gets resolved and engaged with by more legal commentators as we go forward. I think it is true. It is obviously true that there are meaningful differences between Donald Trump and the others in terms of how they responded to the request to give over the documents that they inappropriately kept. So yes, Donald Trump obstructed justice. Donald Trump did more than the other people did. At the same time, the Espionage Act has been applied to throw people in jail who have done less than what Biden and Pence and Hillary and all of them did. So that there still is a question raised about selective prosecution and who does and who does not get prosecuted, even if it is also true that there are different levels of bad actions here among this crew of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you, and I think we should continue to explore how the Espionage Act has been used to brutally punish people, not just your celebrated political figures, but just like everyday
regular people,
Americans. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.